There's a hidden story that millions of men carry around with them, a lot of times in total silence. We're going to talk about the absent father wound today. It's an injury that can really shape a person's entire life, often without them even having the words to explain what it is they're feeling. And this really hits home. It's a story that starts way, way before a man ever has the language for it. This really sets the scene for a quiet story that begins back in childhood. Right at that moment, a little boy realizes that one of the people who was supposed to love him most just isn't there. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to try and open that door that so many have kept locked. We're going to put some words to this wound, bring how it works out into the open, and trace its impact all the way from childhood into the man he becomes. So how does it all begin? Well, it's probably not what you think. It's not some big, dramatic, explosive event. It starts quietly, in what our source material calls the first silence. No, it's felt in these small, repeated, everyday moments. It's this quiet but constant reminder that someone is missing. Like an empty chair at the dinner table night after night. And you feel it in the big moments too. The ones that are supposed to be happy, but instead they're just tinged with this feeling of being incomplete. The boy just observes and slowly starts to piece together that something really fundamental is missing from the picture of his life. And all of this growing feeling, it's just surrounded by this confusing, deafening silence. He's like a sponge, taking it all in, but when he looks around for answers, there are none. And that creates this vacuum that his young mind just rushes to fill. So what does a kid's brain do with all that silence? Well, it fills in the blanks. And without any other explanation, he turns the question inward and asks something just devastating. Maybe I wasn't enough. And this gets to a really fundamental truth about psychology. A child's instinct is to make the problem about them. And in that one moment of self-blame, that's when the wound is truly born. Okay, so this wound forms in childhood, right? But it absolutely does not stay there. It goes on to shape his behavior for decades. It creates what our source calls a performance of goodness, these survival strategies that, to the rest of us, can really look a lot like strength. So on the outside, you see these traits that we all admire, maturity, kindness, being super independent. But often on the inside, they are something else entirely. They're actually survival tools, shields and armor that he's built to protect that first original wound. And what's driving all this? What's the engine behind this performance? It's this deep, powerful, underlying belief, if I'm good enough, if I'm perfect, no one else will leave. It becomes his core programming, a desperate attempt to make sure that original abandonment never, ever happens again. And this totally reframes something you've probably seen a million times: people-pleasing. In this context, it's not just about being nice. It's a defense. It's a shield that he holds up against that deep, burning fear of being left behind all over again. Think about how this plays out in real life. Setting a simple boundary, something as small as saying no, can suddenly feel like the stakes are incredibly high. It feels dangerous, like it could be the very thing that triggers the disappearance he's so terrified of. All right, so let's shift gears and look at what's happening on the inside. What are the internal consequences of this wound? Well, he becomes what the source material describes as a man built from fragments. I love this metaphor. It says he becomes an architect with missing blueprints. He's literally trying to build a sense of who he is, a sense of self, of what it means to be a man, but without the main guide. He's forced to just piece it all together from whatever he can find. Culture, movies, pure guesswork. And because of that feeling of being incomplete, of being built from scraps, he develops this relentless, just bottomless hunger for approval from the outside world to try and fill that void inside. And every compliment, every piece of praise, it feels good for a second. It's like taking a sip of water when you're dying of thirst. It's refreshing, sure, but it's never, ever enough to quench that deep, underlying thirst for the validation he was supposed to get as a child. This is why criticism can be so devastating. It's not just feedback, right? To him, a simple comment gets run through this internal filter of the wound, and it comes out translated as a confirmation of his worst fear: you're a failure. And just like that, he feels that childhood rejection all over again. And, buried underneath all of this, the people-pleasing, the chasing validation, there is a ton of unspoken anger. Anger about having to grow up too fast. Anger about having no one to show him the way. And really, at its core, anger about not being chosen. But because letting that anger out feels so risky, it gets turned inward and becomes this relentless, brutal self-criticism. So, is that it? Is that the whole story? No. We're going to pivot now and talk about hope. Because the path to healing, well, funny enough, it often starts with everything falling apart. It begins, then the old strategies just stop working. See, eventually, you hit a wall. The performance becomes too exhausting to keep up. The pretending is impossible. The loneliness is suffocating. And those coping mechanisms he's relied on his whole life, they finally and completely fail. But here's the crucial thing to understand. That moment of breaking down, it's not a failure. It is a release. It's like a dam breaking, and everything he's pushed down for years, the anger, the grief, the fear, it all comes rushing to the surface at once. It's painful, for sure, but it is absolutely necessary. So, healing has to start with one single foundational truth. It's all about rewriting that story he told himself as a kid. The very first step is to internalize this deep down. You were never the reason he left. It was never about your worth. And that leaves us with a choice. It's a really powerful question you have to ask yourself. Because healing is about taking back your power. It's a choice to stop being the wounded boy who was left behind and to step into being the whole, present man. So the choice is yours. Will you be defined by the past, or will you become the man the world needs you to be?